The grand hall of the Ivan Palace was a spectacle of wealth and power. Overhead, delicate golden chandeliers hung like glowing, oversized flowers, casting light that flickered across the polished stone floors. The air hummed with the buzz of diplomacy, whispers of promises, of treaties, of delicate words wrapped in veiled threats. And at the center of it all was Captain Maya Rios, the lone human among a sea of alien aristocrats, her polished black uniform standing out like a slash of ink. Maya's sharp eyes darted from face to face, reading the room with practiced ease. Her fingers idly traced the edge of her glass, the wine inside swirling lazily as she scanned the crowd. But her mind wasn't on the endless politicking. It was on Moose. Moose, her golden retriever, had wandered off again. Her gaze swept the room. No sign of him. She had barely turned her back to chat with a Yevon diplomat about trade agreements before the dog vanished from her sight. In his defense, Moose wasn't one for subtlety. Even with his genetically enhanced intellect, the dog had a knack for attracting attention. And now, amid the high-ranking diplomats and shady power players of the galaxy, he was somewhere causing a scene. Maya sighed, setting her glass down with an almost inaudible clink. A quick glance at her watch showed that the diplomatic summit was far from over. She couldn't afford to look like a distracted fool in front of these people. Diplomatic errors on this scale could tip the balance of peace between entire empires. Still, Moose was family, and family came first. "Excuse me," she muttered to the diplomat in front of her, not even bothering to let him finish his sentence. She gave him a polite but empty smile before slipping away, eyes searching the crowd. She walked through the hall, between groups of glittering figures, but found no trace of her mischievous companion. The room was a blend of sharp suits, opulent robes, and silent power plays. But no dog. Her heart skipped a beat when she noticed a security guard flinch as he caught sight of her approach. And then, there, a familiar tuft of golden fur. Moose. But he wasn't just wandering around, sniffing at the fine carpets as he usually did. He was being escorted, no, dragged, by a Yevon noble. The noble's face was unreadable, but his grip on Moose's collar was firm, and his eyes were cold with purpose. Maya's pulse quickened. She took a slow step forward, then another, her boots silent on the polished floors. Her hand brushed the sidearm beneath her jacket, but she knew the last thing she needed right now was a scene. The noble caught sight of her approach and smiled, a thin, mocking smile. "Captain Rios," he said smoothly, though his voice lacked warmth, "I trust your dog is simply enjoying the festivities." It was all Maya could do not to let her temper flare. She forced herself to keep her voice steady. "That's not your dog to take." The noble didn't respond immediately. Instead, he only raised an eyebrow and tightened his grip on Moose's collar. The dog whimpered softly but didn't struggle. Moose wasn't afraid. He trusted Maya. Maya's eyes burned with quiet fury. She was diplomatic, yes, but no one messed with her dog. And in that moment, she made a promise. If the Yevon thought this was some harmless act, they were gravely mistaken. The air in the Ivan Palace was thick with tension. Maya stood at the edge of the grand hall, her fingers clenched into fists at her sides. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her face remained a perfect mask of calm. The noble had been all too smug in his little game, but he underestimated one crucial detail. Her dog was not some mere ornament to be passed around. Maya's mind raced. She had to act. The Yevon didn't take kindly to human interference, especially not from someone like her. An envoy, yes, but also an ex-Special Forces officer with a tendency to break all the rules when the situation called for it. And right now, the situation was calling for exactly that. The noble had disappeared through a set of reinforced doors, no doubt heading deeper into the palace where security would be tighter. Maya couldn't wait for the summit's conclusion. She couldn't wait for permission. She didn't even have time to think through the consequences. Without a moment's hesitation, Maya moved, slipping through the crowd with the precision of a shadow. Her every step was calculated, her eyes sharp, darting toward every movement, every hidden exit. She knew these palaces, their intricate systems, the hidden passages behind marble columns, the way security cameras operated. She'd done her homework, and now it was paying off. The corridors beyond the grand hall were quieter, more pristine, the echoes of her boots muffled by the thick velvet carpeting. She moved swiftly, taking a sharp turn down a narrow passageway that led to a service elevator. Her hand hovered over the control panel, reading the holographic interface. A flicker of light illuminated the doorway before she slid inside, her heart still pounding. She had one shot at this. The clock was ticking. The elevator hummed its ascent. Maya's mind was already running through the possibilities, the risks, calculating the odds. The noble was arrogant enough to think he could walk away with her dog, but he was making a grave mistake. Moose wasn't just any dog. He had been part of an experiment, a test subject for a project designed to elevate animal intelligence. He had a connection with Maya, a deep neural link that allowed them to communicate in ways others couldn't understand. If she was quick enough, she might even be able to call to him, communicate her position before it was too late. The elevator doors slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing a long corridor lined with security drones. Maya's pulse quickened, but she didn't hesitate. She slipped into the shadows, her presence almost imperceptible. She checked the pistol at her side. No time for diplomacy now. Her feet were silent against the floor as she crept toward the door at the far end of the hallway, where she knew the noble would be holding Moose. The door was slightly ajar, the faintest trace of movement visible through the crack. Maya gritted her teeth. She couldn't afford to be caught. Not now. With a smooth motion, she pulled a small device from her pocket, an electromagnetic pulse generator. One press of a button, and the security systems around her flickered and went dark. The drones, now useless, hovered in place, unaware of her presence. Maya exhaled. It was now or never. She pushed the door open quietly, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room. There, standing beside a massive glass observation window, was the noble. He turned as she entered, a look of surprise flickering across his face. Moose sat at his feet, uncharacteristically still, but his eyes locked onto hers. Recognition and trust, shining in those warm brown depths. Maya didn't waste time with words. She wasn't here to negotiate. She stepped forward, a quick and decisive movement, pulling Moose to her side. Her hand wrapped around his collar, but before she could leave, the noble stepped forward, blocking the exit. "Captain Rios," he said coldly, "you are out of your depth." The words hung in the air like a challenge, but Maya didn't flinch. Her voice was low, steady. "Let him go." A smirk played on the noble's lips, but before he could respond, Maya was already moving, faster than he could react. She ducked under his arm, pulling Moose along with her, and in a single fluid motion, she slammed the door behind her. It was the start of a war, but for now, at least, the battle was hers. Maya's boots echoed on the sleek metal floor of the embassy ship, a rhythmic reminder of the chaos she'd just unleashed. Moose trotted beside her, his golden fur still slightly damp from the tension of their escape. The dog, usually calm, had a nervous energy about him now. His ears flicked at every sound, his eyes constantly darting around. Maya couldn't blame him. She was on the edge of losing control. She entered her private quarters with a quick glance over her shoulder, shutting the door behind her. Her room was sparsely decorated, with only the essentials, nothing to attract attention. She pulled off her jacket and tossed it onto the chair, her mind racing. There was no time to relax, no time for the usual military protocol. This wasn't just about a missing dog anymore. There was something far bigger happening, and she knew it had everything to do with the Ivan hierarchy. Moose padded over to his favorite spot, a small cushioned mat by the window, and flopped down, his head resting on his paws. He let out a low, almost imperceptible whine, as if sensing her unease. Maya ran a hand through her short black hair and activated the holographic interface on her desk. A flurry of encrypted messages popped up, each one flashing urgent. She ignored them for now, reaching instead for the encrypted data slate she'd stolen from the Ivan noble. With a deep breath, she slotted the slate into the console and began to decrypt it. The screen flickered, and lines of code filled the air in front of her. As the decryption progressed, the lines revealed coordinates, system maps, and something else, something far more sinister. Hidden beneath the layers of diplomatic jargon, she found what she was looking for: an operation, codenamed Project Dawn, located on a remote planet called Ortel Prime. The name sent a chill down her spine. Ortel Prime wasn't on any known charts. It was an out-of-the-way world that only appeared in the ancient archives of galactic myths, a place where the Wyverns sent their worst enemies to disappear. Maya leaned in closer, her fingers trembling slightly as she pulled up more data. The coordinates led to a region of space known as the Shroud of Purity, a notorious faction in the Wyvern Empire that wanted to sever all ties with the humans. The same faction that had been stirring up trouble across the galaxy, and that had secretly infiltrated the highest ranks of Wyvern power. Her stomach tightened as she pieced the information together. The Wyvern didn't just want Moose for a pet. He was part of something much bigger, an experiment, perhaps even a weapon, designed to remove the human influence from the galaxy entirely. Moose had been targeted because of his enhanced abilities, his ability to connect with humans on a level no ordinary animal could. And that meant Maya had just stumbled into the heart of a conspiracy that could tear the galaxy apart. The door to her quarters buzzed, snapping her back to reality. She stood quickly, wiping the sweat from her palms, and slid the data slate into her jacket. She checked the security feed. A group of Terran Union officials stood outside. Her superior, Commander Lyle, was at the front. Maya didn't have time for formalities. She hit the button to open the door. Lyle stepped in, his face grim. "Captain Rios," he said, his voice heavy. "We need to talk." "I don't have time." Maya shot back, moving past him toward the door. "I found something. Something big. And I'm going after it." Lyle caught her arm, his grip firm. "You're out of line, Rios. The summit is still ongoing. We have orders to." "Orders?" Maya snapped, cutting him off. "I don't care about the summit. I care about my dog. I care about what's happening in the Ivan Empire. And I'm going to stop it, no matter what it takes." Lyle opened his mouth to argue, but stopped, seeing the determination in her eyes. He sighed. "You've gone too far this time. We're pulling you from the mission." Maya met his gaze. "You can pull me from the mission all you want. I'm going." With a swift motion, she brushed past him, ignoring the warning in his eyes. She grabbed her sidearm and strapped it to her thigh. Moose stood up, sensing her resolve, and trotted after her. "I'll see you at Ortel Prime," Maya muttered under her breath. The dog barked, as if in agreement. The Ivan Empire wasn't going to get away with this, not while she still had breath in her lungs. Ortel Prime was everything Maya had expected and more. A desolate wasteland of jagged cliffs and roiling black seas, the planet was cloaked in eternal twilight. No stars shone in its sky, only swirling nebulae that flickered like dying embers. There was no sign of life, no bustling cities or populated settlements. Just silence, the kind of silence that swallowed you whole. Maya stepped off the shuttle, her boots crunching against the ash-colored ground. The air was thick and cold, and each breath felt like swallowing glass. She glanced over at Moose, who was already sniffing the ground, his nose twitching as though sensing something in the distance. The dog was on edge, his usual calm replaced by a tense energy. "This place gives me the creeps," Maya muttered, adjusting her rifle on her back. She had no intention of finding out what kind of creep it was, but she had learned long ago that the universe didn't care what she intended. The shuttle's engines hummed as it lifted off, leaving her alone with the vast emptiness of Ortel Prime. She checked her map, the coordinates leading her to an ancient underground facility buried beneath the planet's surface. No one had been here in centuries, at least not officially. The Shroud of Purity had kept this place hidden for a reason. A low growl rumbled from Moose. Maya's eyes snapped to the horizon just in time to see a flash of movement, a shadow darting between the rocks. She tensed, her hand instinctively going to her sidearm. The air around her seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled. The vibration started as a soft hum, but quickly escalated into a violent quake. Dust and rocks cascaded down from the cliffs as something massive stirred below. Maya took a step back, her instincts screaming at her to move, but the sound of an engine cut through the tension. A military transport ship, sleek and black, broke through the clouds above and shot toward the surface. The Shroud. They had found her. Maya didn't wait for them to land. She sprinted toward a nearby ridge, her pulse pounding in her ears. Moose followed, barking to keep pace. She couldn't let them catch her. Not now. Not with what was at stake. The ridge was steep, but Maya scaled it with ease, her training kicking in. She reached the top and crouched behind a jagged outcrop, her breath coming in shallow bursts. The transport ship landed several hundred meters away, kicking up a cloud of ash and debris as it settled. Maya pulled out a pair of binoculars, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the scene below. A group of heavily armed soldiers in black combat armor emerged from the ship, fanning out in a wide arc. Their movements were precise, like a well-oiled machine. Maya knew they were looking for her, looking for anyone who dared to trespass on their secret world. But Maya wasn't just anyone. She was a human, and she had something they wanted. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the encrypted data slate, now half cracked but still intact. The information it held, on Project Dawn, on the Shroud's plans, could bring down everything they'd built. She couldn't afford to lose it. Moose barked again, a sharp, warning sound. Maya turned just in time to see a large, insectoid creature charging up the ridge. Its mandibles clacked together, saliva dripping from its twisted jaws. It was massive, nearly the size of a truck, and it moved with unnatural speed. Without thinking, Maya raised her rifle and fired, the shot ringing out through the eerie stillness. The creature staggered, the bullet slamming into its side, but it didn't stop. It let out a bone-chilling screech and charged again. Maya dove to the side, rolling behind a large boulder just as the creature lunged for her. Moose was right behind her, barking furiously, his teeth bared. Maya scrambled to her feet, but the creature was fast, too fast. She fired again, her shots landing in rapid succession, but the beast's thick hide absorbed the hits. It was getting closer, its claws scraping the rocks as it came at her. In a split second, Maya reached for her last resort, her combat knife. With a swift motion, she hurled it at the creature's exposed underbelly. The blade sank deep. The creature froze, then crumpled to the ground, its massive body collapsing with a heavy thud. Maya stood there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down her brow. Moose trotted up to her, his tail wagging as if nothing had happened. She gave the dog a quick, appreciative pat before turning her attention back to the soldiers below. The hunt had begun, and she was the prey. The planet seemed to pulse with life, but not in the way Maya expected. The silence that had enveloped Ortel Prime was shattered by the constant rumble of engines, the harsh screech of wind, and the echoing clang of metal on stone. She crouched low, using the jagged rocks as cover, her eyes scanning the horizon. The Shroud soldiers had set up a perimeter, their heavy boots grinding against the barren ground as they moved in tight formation. Maya's grip tightened on her rifle, the weight of it familiar in her hands. Moose was close by, his golden fur almost invisible in the dark, his eyes alert. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, like something was about to snap. The data slate pulsed in her pocket, a quiet reminder of why she was here. The information it contained could bring down the entire Vivan Empire, or whatever it was now, after the corruption had taken root in its highest ranks. Her mind raced as she tried to think of her next move. The soldiers were good, too good to underestimate. They weren't here just for a dog. They were here for her, and they knew she was close. She had only one advantage: the element of surprise. As the soldiers spread out, Maya's eyes locked onto one of their leaders, a tall figure, his face obscured by a helmet with dark, reflective visors. He was scanning the ridgeline, where Maya had just taken cover. She knew they hadn't spotted her yet, but it wouldn't be long before they did. Taking a deep breath, Maya began to move, her boots soft against the ground. Every step was calculated, a dance she knew well. She slid down the ridge, hugging the rocks for cover. The soldiers didn't seem to notice her at first. Their focus was on the path ahead, the rocky terrain that stretched out into the distance, nothing but desolate land and dust. A sudden bark from Moose made her freeze. The soldiers' heads snapped up, their guns drawn. The leader's voice crackled through the comms. "Search the ridge. Now." Maya cursed under her breath. She had only seconds to act. She sprinted low, her body moving like a shadow across the rocky ground. Her eyes tracked the movement of the soldiers as they closed in on the ridge, unaware of her approach. She knew the terrain better than they did, and that gave her an edge. She climbed higher, ducking behind a series of boulders, watching as the soldiers began to fan out, their sensors scanning for heat signatures. Then she saw it. One of the soldiers was getting too close. His boots were crunching against the gravel just below her position. Maya's hand hovered over the rifle slung across her back, but then she remembered the ammo. It wasn't enough for a full firefight. If she could take him down quietly, she might have a chance to slip past the others. She reached for the stun grenade at her waist, pulling the pin with a practiced flick. She tossed it over the edge of the rock, just as the soldier was about to pass. The grenade landed with a soft thud, rolling toward him. The soldier's head snapped up, his eyes widening as he saw the grenade. But it was too late. A burst of bright, blinding light erupted from the grenade, followed by an electrical crackle that made the air itself vibrate. The soldier dropped to the ground, his body twitching uncontrollably as the stun effect took hold. Maya wasted no time. She rushed to his side, grabbing his weapon before he could recover. A quick, efficient motion. She disabled his comms unit and stuffed it into her pack. The soldier wasn't dead, but he would be out for long enough for her to get away. She ducked low and moved toward the next cluster of rocks, where a faint trail led deeper into the heart of the Shroud's camp. There, hidden beneath the surface, was the truth, the heart of Project Dawn. Moose growled low, his fur bristling. Maya's eyes narrowed as she heard footsteps approaching. She took a breath and steadied herself. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about exposing the lies. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. She wasn't just a human against impossible odds. She was a force, and it was time to show the galaxy what a human could do when pushed too far. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she moved deeper into the Shroud's facility, the air thick with the scent of metal and decay. The walls around her were cold, constructed from a strange black alloy that seemed to absorb the light. The only sounds were the faint hum of machinery and the soft clatter of her boots on the metal floor. Moose moved silently beside her, his fur bristling as he sniffed the air, ears flicking at every sound. The corridors of the underground base twisted and turned like a labyrinth, but Maya had studied the schematics. She knew exactly where she was going. Ahead, a heavy door loomed, its surface pocked with burn marks and the scars of old battles. Behind it lay the heart of Project Dawn. The truth, everything she'd risked her life for. She approached the door, her fingers grazing the control panel beside it. Her pulse quickened as she ran a quick diagnostic, checking for any traps or security systems. Nothing. It was too quiet, too easy. Without wasting a second, Maya slid her hand over the panel, triggering the door to slide open with a soft hiss. She slipped inside, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the sight of what lay before her. The chamber was vast, its high ceiling supported by thick steel beams. Suspended in the center was a massive glass tank, filled with a thick, viscous fluid. Inside the tank, a series of large, almost grotesque shapes floated, their eyes wide and unblinking. It was clear that whatever they weren't human, but there was something familiar about them. Maya's breath caught in her throat. One of the figures was unmistakable, the dark fur, the golden eyes. Moose's mother. She barely registered the surge of emotion before her mind snapped back into focus. She had to stay sharp. This wasn't just about Moose. This was bigger than that. These creatures, these experiments, they were part of Project Dawn. The Shroud had been using animals, enhancing them to be something more than just beasts. They had been creating soldiers, weapons. Maya's gaze swept over the rest of the room, landing on a bank of monitors. The screens flickered to life as she approached, displaying an array of data. Information flooded her mind, each piece more horrifying than the last. The project was far beyond what she'd imagined. Moose was only one of many. And the Wyvern weren't just interested in weaponizing animals. They were planning to create an army of genetically enhanced creatures to use against humanity. A voice echoed from the shadows, cold and menacing. "You shouldn't have come here, Captain." Maya spun, her hand instinctively reaching for her sidearm. A tall, gaunt figure stepped into the light, his face obscured by a mask. The voice was unmistakable. It was the same Wyvern noble who had taken Moose. "You think you can stop this?" he continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "Project Dawn is already beyond your reach. We've already won." Maya's pulse raced, but she kept her focus. "You're a monster," she spat, her voice hard. "What you've done to these animals, to these creatures, this is an abomination." The noble's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Abomination? No, Captain. This is evolution. The Wyvern will lead the galaxy into a new era. We will be unstoppable." Before Maya could respond, the door to the chamber slammed shut with a deafening thud. She spun, eyes narrowing. The noble's smile widened. "You're trapped now." Maya's mind raced as she scanned the room. The Wyvern had anticipated her, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated her. With a sharp motion, she pulled a small explosive charge from her pack and slapped it against the wall. The device beeped, counting down. "Let's see how unstoppable you are," Maya muttered, backing away as the countdown neared 0. The noble's eyes flicked to the device, then to her, and in that brief moment, she saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. Maya turned on her heel, her eyes meeting Moose's as he barked in warning. She was going to get out of this, no matter what, and she wasn't leaving without a fight. The countdown ticked. 3, 2, 1. The blast tore through the chamber with a roar, sending fire and shards of metal across the room. The shockwave knocked Maya to the ground, and even with her helmet's dampeners, the sound rang in her ears. Moose barked sharply beside her, unharmed but alert, his body tense and ready to move. The glass tank in the center cracked from the force, a long fracture splitting across its surface. Fluid poured out in thick streams, and the mutated creatures inside began to thrash, some waking, others dying in confusion. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed through the compound like wounded animals. Maya forced herself up, her body aching. Her eyes darted to the side. No sign of the Wyvern noble. Either he'd escaped, or he was buried under the rubble. Either way, she had no time to find out. She grabbed the data slate from the console. Smoke stung her eyes, but she didn't slow. She sprinted through the broken chamber toward the exit as red lights bathed the corridor in morning. The base was collapsing. Her explosive had triggered a chain reaction. "Come on, Moose," she shouted, and the dog followed close behind. Ears pinned back, paws pounding on the metal floor. Behind them, the ground shook violently. A section of the ceiling groaned, then crashed down where they had just run. Maya didn't look back. The fire was spreading. She had only minutes before the entire structure caved in. They moved fast through the twisting corridors, now filled with smoke and flashing lights. Her path back to the surface was blocked, collapsed by debris and fire. She skidded to a halt and checked her map. There, an old maintenance shaft near the genetics wing. Maya turned sharply and pushed through a side door. It squealed on rusted hinges as she ducked inside, the corridor narrower and darker than before. Thick cables hung like vines from the ceiling. Sparks rained down from broken light fixtures. The heat was rising fast. They'd reached the shaft. It was a narrow tube with an old manual ladder, the kind that hadn't been used in decades. Maya stared up at it. It climbed 30 meters straight to the surface. "No choice," she muttered. She started climbing, one hand after another, her muscles burning with each pull. Moose stayed below, growling at the smoke creeping in. "Moose, jump." The dog leaped, landing halfway up. Maya reached with one arm and hauled him higher. He scrambled onto her shoulders, his paws digging into her back for balance. They climbed the last stretch together, coughing from the heat, vision blurry. At last, light. Maya pushed open the hatch with a grunt. Cool wind rushed over her face as she tumbled onto the rocky surface. Moose landed beside her, panting but safe. Behind them, the facility erupted. Flames burst from hidden vents, and the ground shook like thunder. A column of black smoke climbed into the sky. Maya stood, silhouetted against the burning crater. Her hair whipped in the wind. She held the data slate tightly. They had the truth now, and the Empire would hear it. Maya stood at the edge of the destroyed facility, the smoke curling up into the sky like dark fingers reaching for the stars. The wind howled, carrying the distant echoes of collapsing structures. She couldn't afford to feel relief. Not yet. Not while the Ivan Empire's dark secret was still alive and buried beneath the rubble. She turned to Moose, who stood at her side, panting heavily, his golden eyes reflecting the harsh light. He was more than just a dog. He was the key to everything. The genetic experiments, the twisted ambitions of the Wyvern. They had underestimated the bond between human and beast, and now Maya had a chance to use it against them. "Let's go, buddy," she muttered, her voice a low growl of determination. She clicked her comm unit, activating the emergency signal. It would send a message, a warning, to the closest fleet in the sector. If she couldn't stop the Empire herself, she would at least make sure the truth got out. The encrypted data slate in her hands hummed, waiting for the moment when she could transmit everything. It held the answers, the proof that the Ivan had turned animals into weapons, breeding them to be tools for their war machine. As she made her way back toward the shuttle, the rumble of approaching engines stopped her cold. The ground vibrated beneath her feet, and the air grew heavy. A low, menacing hum filled the air. She turned just in time to see a massive shuttle descending from the smoke-filled sky. Its sleek black hull gleamed in the dim light, the insignia of the Shroud of Purity emblazoned on its side. It hovered above her, slowly descending. Maya's hand instinctively went to her sidearm, but she knew this wasn't just a normal patrol. This was a final reckoning. The shuttle's doors opened with a hiss, and figures stepped out, their combat boots thudding against the charred earth. At their head was the Wyvern noble, the one who had taken Moose, the one who had orchestrated the horrors Maya had uncovered. He was unmasked now, his face pale, his eyes burning with fury. His arrogance was palpable, even from a distance. "Maya," he called, his voice carrying over the wind. "You've cost us everything." She raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. "It's a little late for regrets, don't you think?" His eyes narrowed, the sneer on his lips sharpening. "You have no idea what you've started, human. The galaxy will burn for your rebellion." Maya's fingers tightened around the rifle slung across her back. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "You're wrong," she said, voice steady. "The galaxy's not going to burn. But you are. You and your empire." The noble's eyes flicked to the data slate in her hand, and he stiffened. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "You think your little data will change anything? The shroud has already set things in motion. You're too late. Maya stepped forward, her boots crunching on the ashes beneath her. She didn't hesitate. Maybe. But you forgot one thing. The noble looked at her, puzzled. I'm human. Her words were a declaration, a promise. With a flick of her wrist, she activated the data slate, sending a signal into the sky. The transmission was now live. Everything about Project Dawn, the genetic horrors, the twisted experiments, and the plans to weaponize entire species. It was all on its way to the Galactic Senate. The noble lunged, but it was too late. The signal had already left. Maya's smirk grew wider. You lost, she said, her voice cutting through the wind. The noble froze, the realization dawning on him. He reached for his sidearm, but Maya was faster. She drew her pistol in one smooth motion, firing 3 quick shots. The noble's body crumpled, and the soldiers behind him hesitated, confusion flashing in their eyes. Maya turned and ran, pulling Moose along with her. The explosion of energy from the shuttle's thrusters lit up the dark sky behind them, but Maya didn't look back. She was already gone.